Good morning, sunshine. I'm Carey Pena alongside Brandon Lee. Thank you all so much for being with us for our show all about mental health and holistic healing.
Yeah, and we're so happy that you're here with us today. Let's talk about what's going down in the world of behavioral and mental health. Okay, listen, online doctor appointments, telemedicine, it is here to stay, all right? It's never gonna go away. We love the convenience of it. Have you ever done telemedicine?
Yes.
I prefer that now rather than going to the doctor's office for like 95% of the stuff that you need to communicate with your doctor about. You can do it online. Here's the thing, every doctor's office now has created their own app to make it accessible for their, for their clients and their patients to go online and use their apps for telemedicine. Here's the thing though, some of those apps have been selling your information to third parties. And so there's this huge warning out there now that telehealth has skyrocketed to really protect yourself and to know what information you're putting out there. We are putting out some really private information when we do telehealth.
Yeah.
And so the warning here is, hey, listen, every time you go into your app, make sure you go into the settings, go into the specific app settings and make sure you restrict sharing any of your personal data.
Data mining is no joke.
Huge right now.
And there's a lot, so Google this if you do telemedicine, because there's some really good articles about how you can protect yourself, and also make sure you're going in there and reading the privacy labels and understanding the app and turn as much stuff off as you can.
Absolutely. It's all about protecting yourself, because as Americans, we will never get rid of the convenience of telemedicine now that it's here. I always say, yeah, the pandemic sucked, but sometimes we got to look at the positive side of it. Some positive things came out of it. Telehealth, I think, is one of them.
Yeah.
But again, it's just another opportunity. Anytime you go online in the World Wide Web, people are out there trying to mine your data.
Absolutely.
So protect yourself at all costs, especially when it comes to your medical records and background. All right, let's get to the story behind the story today. I'm really excited to have a friend of mine now, Jennifer Etzel, on the show, because she has an incredible story of inspiration and hope. And boy, did it ever start with a downward spiral. Jennifer, it's good to have you here.
Thank you so much for being here.
And thank you for always, I will say this, thank you for always going out there and sharing your story, because it is so inspiring. I've had you on the podcast before, and let's do the down dirty version of your story, because let me tell you, you were a nurse, and then you ended up facing prison time, running with the cartel, and nearly lost everything. What sent you first spiraling when you were a nurse?
Now that I've dug into my addiction, it was probably that I was always an addict. I was just an addict in ways that everybody seemed to praise. Maybe an extreme athlete or extreme degree getter or extreme workaholic. I always had to strive for titles. So I think that lack of balance in my life really showed the addict in me, but I did start by abusing Adderall. That's how I started.
What was the point where you realized this is just absolutely out of control?
It's such a good question, because when you're in it, you're like drowning in this whirlpool, and it's not right. You weren't raised like this. This is wrong. You don't really realize it until you get in front of a judge and you realize that right now, this is it. I'm done. There is no hope for me. I have 3 felonies. They're literally going to put me in prison today. And that's when it hit me really hard.
Your felonies were for what kind of crimes?
They were drug-related, self-harm to myself. One of them was for transporting marijuana, because I did get wrapped up into the cartel. I was dating somebody who was a cartel member. I was very, very naive, and they used me, basically.
How did you start turning things around?
Well, I was facing prison, and I was really, really terrified. I had twin boys that I had lost custody of, facing prison, had a drug addiction, lost everything that normal people had, home, career, everything. Finally, I was able to go to a rehab, and I stayed there for almost 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I just lived very humbly in a woman's apartment that they had there. And slowly but surely, as I worked the steps of recovery, and most importantly, forgave myself, that I was my biggest hindering block. I could not forgive myself. I felt like if I forgave myself, it was giving myself a pass on all that I had done wrong, that it was saying it was okay that I basically abandoned my children. It was okay that I lost my nursing license. It was okay that I shamed my family. but I had to let that grief go. It was like a weight. And once I did that, everything just turned around.
You had your nursing license before all that
Correct.
hit you.
Correct.
And then you ended up losing your nursing license.
Yes.
Because when it comes to nursing, right, they don't want anything on your record.
That is correct.
You can't be doing what you were doing and still be a nurse. What I love so much about your story is that you didn't take that as the final answer, and that you fought so hard to prove by your actions, not your words, Jennifer, by your actions, that you were a changed person. And you were able to finally, one of the rarities, to get your nursing license back. What was that moment like when you got the letter saying that you can now be a nurse again?
It was the culmination. You know, I got my kids back. I got my felony set aside. I had material items. I was putting things back together that I had lost. But that was just that one thing that everybody told me, like, they're never going to give you back your nursing license. There's no way. But I persisted. And I had a girlfriend of mine who was like, you're crazy. Fear's a liar. Just do it. You need to do it. You need to try. And I even was like, there's no way. I read all the articles about nursing in the Arizona Board of Nursing. They're not going to give me it. They don't give you if you have felonies. And I'm telling you, that moment was surreal. It was absolutely miraculous that they all voted unanimously to reinstate my RN.
Can you talk about why you wanted to share your story? I mean, I thought that was beautiful how you said you had to release yourself, because there's many elements of probably guilt and shame that go along with your story. And a lot of people would not want to be other people to know. You'd want to just move on. Yeah. Why is it important for you to stand up and say, this is what happened, this is what I did, but importantly, here's how I moved on?
Because I want to help one nurse, one person, but really one nurse. Nurses are suffering right now. The pandemic has destroyed their mental health so much. And there are people that are predisposed to maybe excessive drinking at night or partying too hard on the weekend, and they can still manage to function on Monday. But really, they need to know there is help out there. You don't have to get to the level that I was, where you lost your nursing license and you got felonies and you had to fight for it to get back. We need to catch these nurses now. Yeah. And I want them to know that we're not here. The Board of Nursing is not there to set you up for failure. They're not there to pull your license and take away your career. They really do want to help you.
And I think it's such a beautiful thing you're doing. You're taking your past trauma, you've healed from it, and now trying to help others with it. And you're also on this other mission. And I think that mission is always speaking it out loud of some things that you would like to see change in the current way that our system is set up just here in America in so many levels. Is that you're really trying to get people who were even in your line of work, and understanding, like, how can we get our records expunged after a certain amount of time of doing good in the community? Why does that always have to be a scarlet letter on somebody for the rest of their life?
Yes, unfortunately in Arizona, we do not have expungement. We have set aside, which is worthless. It really just says that you've completed your probation, you've paid your fines, you're clear to own a firearm or vote or serve on a jury. It really does nothing to get rid of my past. I've totally atoned for myself. I'm a new person. I'm, reborn again, so to speak, and yet everywhere I go, those felonies that I did to myself, I didn't harm anybody, children, God forbid, or anything like that, constantly follow me. And I was telling you, I can't even get life insurance for myself for felonies from 13 years ago. And it causes recidivism in people.
It absolutely does. It's just like why I no longer call myself an addict. I don't physically use that term, the active term. I'm not an addict today. I'm not. I've healed from that.
People cannot continually be punished for the rest of my life for a mistake I made 13 years ago. And it just doesn't end.
Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your story. What would be your takeaway message for people who maybe have gone through some rough stuff and who feel ashamed of what they've done?
Honestly, speaking about it is the most freeing thing you can do. I know you want to bottle it up and you want to hide it and you want to present this persona, and we live in this Instagram world.
Yeah.
Honestly, it feels so good to get it out and not have to walk in that shame and guilt. If I can help one person and feel that they can connect to me and say, you know what, I'm going to speak about it today, that's all I ask.
Jennifer, thank you very much. We appreciate you. That is really beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we want to share a clip from a panel that we produced here at the Center for Positive Media. We like to focus on community journalism. We talked earlier about data mining, and one thing that we're focused on here is really helping people protect themselves, especially when you're on social media. So we had a panel of experts come in to talk to us about how to basically do a threat assessment for yourself and your family. Take a look.
Overall, it is very much focused on just trying to understand that the threats are out there, doing everything that's within your control, because it can be extremely overwhelming. So the dual factor authentication, not going to sites that you think. When you see things that you don't expect to see, whether it be that surprising text that you receive, or email, or attachments that are coming from people that you haven't talked to in a long time. The thing that's people have not done much anymore is they don't pick up the phone. It's extremely easy to pick up the phone and just make a phone call and say, did you send this to me? Or to your point about the social media accounts, you're going to be receiving a text from you with this code. So just communication and general awareness, working with each other, and that's what it is. It really is such a group effort, and on the parenting side, it's overwhelming. There's no doubt, because to your point, the kids are so technically savvy that in many cases they can go around and circumvent things that we as parents think are pretty strong protocols, and then the next thing you know, they're in places they probably shouldn't be.
That segment is really representative of the work we're trying to do here at the Center for Positive Media. And it's amazing how when we pick up the phone and call these experts who are super busy, they're like, yeah, I'll come in to help because I want to help protect people.
Yeah, they understand. I mean, we're living in such a complex world when it comes to social media, and the more social medias that we have, it's a necessity in many of our lives.
Yeah.
Whether it's for businesses or whether it's even for social connection with other people. But we really have to come together, and I love that panel did, coming together to find real common-based solutions for everyday families who are watching to better protect not only themselves, but obviously their kids who are online all the time.
It's so scary. And when you get hacked, it's the most powerless
They actually
feeling.
will hold it hostage.
They'll hold it hostage, and you can't do
ransom
anything.
payment. And you try to go to the powers that be, the Facebooks, Meta, whatever they're calling themselves these days, and Instagrams, and like they're helpless too. They're like, sorry, we can't help you. Sorry, it was hacked.
That's
you got to start over again.
Thing.
It's insanity.
So that's
right
what
now.
I want to see is people empower themselves and know what their rights are. And now we want to welcome for our Mind, Body, Spirit segment, Michelle Goss from the Spirit Mountain Healing Center. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
We wanted to have you on to talk about, well, you have an incredible background in healing and therapy, and you do what's called equine assisted learning. Tell us more about that.
Well, we use horses in the process to help us understand why we get stuck. And making the intangible tangible, if you will. We all know if things aren't quite working right in our life, but we don't know what. And the horses work in the present moment and help us see that. And then we get to practice new skill sets in that moment with the horses and get instant feedback on whether it worked or not. And then we get to make the decisions on how we apply that in our life to go forward and practice and live a better life.
When you say that horses are living in the present, that means that they're constantly in survival mode, right? They're sensing right now, should I be fearful, right? Is that why they're able to connect to people and essentially be a mere reflection of how that person is feeling?
No, not really.
No?
I mean, they do live in the present moment, but that's not necessarily being in survival mode all the time, because none of us are designed to be in survival mode all the time.
Correct.
If you leave the lights on all the time, at some point, even if it's an LED, it will burn out. But what they do is they have one of the best memories in the animal kingdom to remember what they need to be afraid of. They have to use their energy very efficiently in order to survive. They're 1,000-pound animals designed to eat grass, and their main means of defense is running. So you need to balance that. And that's part of training with the horses, is understanding that we can desensitize them to something that would normally be afraid and bring them out of survival mode, which is basically kind of what I do with people with the horses.
Right.
We desensitize to things because our system doesn't know if the threat is real or perceived. It doesn't know here and now, it only knows there and then. And that's why we repeat our patterns. We get stuck, and why do I keep doing this? Why am I in a bad relationship? We're the only animals on the planet that have the ability to ask why, and we are the only animals by thought alone can create our own emotional response. So we get stuck.
But the people oftentimes who are using, whether it's in equine therapy or going to, Spirit Mountain, the humans are often operating in a fight or flight response.
Absolutely.
Way more than a regulated system person would be. So they're able, that's why I think the connection is so great between horse and those people who are in that constant fight or flight state of response.
Just the calming effect. I had a client this morning that had him go out and do an activity and took a chair and a bucket and was doing this project we've been working on before, and kind of combined two activities and went out into the paddock, and he needed space. And the horses stayed away from him, not rejectively, but just away from him as he was working on it. And eventually one came over and kind of bugged, and he's like, well, this is one of my friends, but he was able to say, no, not right now. The horse walked away. Another horse came up and stood there. I actually have pictures of it, of the horse standing right there watching him do this activity and held space for him.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's what he needed this morning.
You've been working with horses, you said, for over 30 years.
All my life.
All your life. And how does the spirituality component play into this for you?
Just connecting with self is the biggest thing. I don't just talk the talk, I walk the walk. One of my horses has saved my life. And one of their brother and sister, full brother and sister, their grandmother was my first horse. So this goes on for generations. Their mother knew me better than I knew myself. And so I think that's the spiritual. They know things that we just don't know or don't understand. And they accept us with all the garbage. I mean, I was listening to the previous story. Yeah, I get that. And here's these huge animals, or my two miniatures, that hold space and go, so what? So what if you've had all that stuff? We get you as you are right now. And I think that's really the powerful spiritual part of it, is being accepted for who we are, no matter what we've gone through, where we're at, as we are right there in that moment.
But that's what makes them special.
Absolutely.
Is because they're able to sense, is this person hurting? Is this person sad? Is this person nervous?
Right.
Because I believe can't they even feel or hear the heartbeat?
Oh, absolutely. This is all about energy.
Yeah, it's all energy.
Energy. And
energy is
they're
everything.
very good at reading that, and they reflect what we need and give us what we need.
Correct.
Can you talk a little bit about the type of people who come to see you? I know our producer was mentioning that your mother, you've worked with your mother in a therapeutic way because she has MS, correct?
She had MS, yes.
Had MS, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about sort of the other people who come to see you and where you see the most effectiveness?
Well, the majority of people that I work with have traumas, usually around anxiety and being stuck in survival mode. Anxiety, depression. Mostly anxiety is, I would say, is the number one thing that I do. And dealing with traumas of affective abuse, whether it's sexual, physical, emotional. We all know someone who's been affected, whether it's ourselves or somebody else that's been affected by that. And helping, and I work with the unit, not just the individual client, but the families as well. Because this, as I call it, is a herd issue. It's not an individual issue. Because what one person is going through does affect the rest of the herd. And we are herd creatures by design. We're social and we need each other. But if we're all stuck in survival mode, as I call it, we ping off each other. And it creates a lot of discourse and disconnect, anxiety, fear, depression, aggression, pick something. I mean,
trauma's generational.
Absolutely.
And if
100%.
our parents don't heal from their trauma, they will pass that trauma down onto their children. And
Absolutely.
That's how it becomes, especially in that herd mentality, that you really have to treat the herd. You have to treat the family as a whole, and those who even suffer from addiction, right?
Oh,
the
absolutely.
impact of that addict. I always say, okay, yes, enough attention is being paid to the addict, but we need to also pay attention to the family.
Yeah.
Right. I have a 14-year-old daughter myself, so I get it. And I did my work because I saw the pattern repeating.
Correct.
And I went,
No, not
I'm
again.
taking the power back. And I work with addicts as well. I work with different facilities here in the Valley to help all that.
Yeah.
Can you just leave the audience with a final word? And if you could, I think you speak so eloquently about this. I can see how good you are at what you do. But because anxiety is something so many people deal with, if I was listening to this or watching this and thinking, where do I start? I have all this anxiety. Like, what do I do?
Reach out to me.
Yeah.
Come see the horses, come hang with them.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. That's the power of this. We don't have to sit and talk about all this.
Correct.
If you're anxious, let's go talk to the horses. a client of mine that just started, an older gal who has been a victim of the romantic scam, took all her savings, everything. She has nothing left. She came to me for her first session. She was not doing well, very unstable, just very shut down. I introduced her to all the horses, and we had a dust storm coming, and I'm like, okay, we need to go. And she's like, I need to say goodbye. Her whole affect completely changed, her persona, everything. And she's like, because one of my little minis, actually, she felt accepted by them in that moment, despite what she'd gone through. And she's like, I can't wait to see you guys again.
And I can connect with this on this level, because so many of the people who suffer trauma and experience trauma, right? They do the one-on-one therapies, they do all the clinical stuff. And what I do in my art studio, it's not clinical art therapy. They're not collaging. They're not talking to me about their traumas. They're able to come in. They're able to just kind of listen to music, choose whatever colors, get their hands messy in the paint, and just be for an hour.
Just be.
And it calms. It helps with their anxiety.
Sure. It takes us out of survival mode and balances us and gives us
And that's
a break.
exactly what you're doing. And
Absolutely.
I think it's such a beautiful thing.
I do too. Michelle, thank you so much. We
Thank you.
appreciate you being
Yeah.
here with us.
Appreciate
Speaking
it.
of your art studio, let's end on a clip.
Yeah.
Our
Okay.
sunshine story.
Talk about that as a transition, and I didn't even mean it
You
as a
didn't
transition.
mean it, but see, you're just
But
that
we
good.
want to talk about this. We're going to show the people who are watching right now a clip. So I do art healing,
Yep.
Not art therapy, but art healing.
Yep.
And it's where the addicts, they come into my art studio once a week. They're in residential treatment, so they come once a week for art therapy. And I tell you, I witness magic all the time. People come in, they're shameful, they're down, they're depressed. By the end of the 90 minutes, they are literally dancing, turning my art studio into a dance studio. And this guy, I think he's in his 50s, and sure enough, I turn around and this guy is just busting a move to Lizzo at the very end of the session. And that to me is what it's about. There's enough
Absolutely.
one-on-one therapy. There's enough EMDR. We have to be able to bring anxiety down and help folks with depression, let them reset and level so that when they go back to their therapies,
Right.
they're more regulated and can get better from it. So
Absolutely, 100%.
I freaking
You
love
texted
it.
me that clip. I was like, I'm living for this clip right now.
I said, this is my why. I mean, I posted that clip. I said, this is my why. This
Yeah.
is why I left
Oh, yeah.
news. This right here is my why to
Yep.
see that reaction. So I know you feel that same cup of
Absolutely.
joy. Your cup has to be filled.
Thank you all so much for joining us for Good Morning Sunshine.
Yes, and you're obviously watching us on YouTube right now. You'll see that little bell notification system. Click on that. Every time we upload a new edition of Good Morning Sunshine, you will be notified. We'll
have
see you
some-
back here for the next episode.
Yeah, and we have some exciting news coming soon that we'll be sharing with all of the
Very
folks
soon.
who are following along
Very
with our
soon.
show. So thanks, everyone. Take good care.